Alright, hello everyone, my name is Disc, and in this video we have a level 11 Dawnbreaker, and for the week's affix we are Oblivion. So, if you're new to my channel, thanks for tuning in. We've had a lot of new subscribers recently, which is pretty exciting. I try and put out videos at least once a week, just doing my best to kind of explain why I'm doing something as discipline, some tips and tricks to min-max our spells. If you're interested in a private lesson, please check out my Medify. It's medify.gg. I've had a lot of really successful lessons over there since the start of the expansion. And if you're interested in any of my UI elements, they are open to all of my students. Also, if you join the channel as a member, they're open to all of my members as well. So this is, I think, probably one of my favorite dungeons, and hopefully this is one of the last 11s I post on my channel. Our group is totally ready for 12s. We've just not had a chance to kind of link up. But Dawnbreaker is one of my favorite dungeons. A lot of really cool things in here we can talk about. But before we start the video, let's flash talents like always. So the build here is not too far different. If you watch my videos, it's kind of the same as always. But I love Life, I love Bulwark. Essence Devourer is great. Wheel and Woe is kind of our spot healing. It kind of demands you be ahead of damage. Then Mindbender, of course. I am running Void Wraith now that I'm getting into higher level keys. It's just going to have a little bit more output. Well, honestly, quite substantially more output. But one change I did want to highlight here, and I might be shooting myself in the foot on this one. Definitely open to change in the future to go back. But I've taken, we have one point that typically I put into Dark Indulgence. I've moved it down to Borrowed Time, and I want to kind of tell you why. So the way I see it, Dark Indulgence is a point that buffs your Rift, essentially. And then Borrowed Time is something that can help buff our pet, our Void Wraith. So, excuse me, what I've noticed is with Dark Indulgence, we have a 100% chance to proc the power of the dark side with a Mind Blast. But what I've noticed is a lot of times I already have a proc, and they don't stack. So this kind of goes to waste. The mana aspect of it, I don't really care. So I look at this as a chance to empower the Rift. And then with Borrowed Time, even though it's one of 2 points, gosh, excuse me, I look at it as a talent that has the ability to help empower our pet. So with a little bit of haste at the front of our window, we're more consistently getting our torments. This is something you'll hear me talk about over and over and over and over. But baseline, we should be trying to get 6 torments. And what I'm noticing, I'm even haste stacked. I have 30% resting haste. It is pretty easy to drop your 6 torment. And then to take that one step further, we should be striving for 7 and 8 torments. And what I'm noticing is getting over the hump of our opener is kind of the hardest part, getting our heals out. So that would look like casting the pet, death, Mind Blast, penance. So that's our opener, I consider it. Those are all of our torment spells. We're putting those on cooldown ASAP. Getting over that hump can be the hardest part of the pet window. And all we need is 4 seconds to kind of get over that hump. And that's what this does. So even with 1 of 2 points, what I'm noticing is because I'm also taking Words of the Pious, I'm casting a shield in front of my window anyway. Because I'm trying to get that buff. There's so much synergy with shields like elsewhere in our book. But I'm very commonly casting a shield before my pet window and getting 4 seconds of 4% haste, which is pretty huge in my opinion. It's helping get over that hump a little bit quicker, and it does a lot to really ensure I'm getting all of my torments. So that's what I'm doing for now. Definitely open to change in the future. I don't know. But now let's take a quick look at the damage overall. This is very important, and it correlates quite a bit to our healing. So as a Disc Priest, our damage really does matter. And looking at my overall, it is buffed by an AUG. I'm at 384,000 per second. Without an AUG in this dungeon, I was more around 350. But looking at the spread, it's Void Wraith and Tropic Rift. These are always going to vie for first and second place, with all the other spells kind of trailing behind. We're going to see a lot of loss if your torment average is below 6 with the Wraith. I think commonly, if you don't have quite as much haste as I do, a 5 torment window is going to be your baseline, but know that 6 is out there. Know that 7 is pretty common, and 8 is possible, but a little more rare. So it's hard to say here if my Wraith is on top because of borrowed time, and my Rift is second because I don't take the Dark Indulgence. Every dungeon kind of just has a different profile as it is. I don't think that one talent point is what changes the spread here. But with the Void Wraith on top, we can see how strong it is on its own. And in this dungeon we have, I think my Torment average is probably around 6.5, which is really good. I get several 7s, I think I get an 8. And I think I don't get anything less than a 6. But one thing I want to ask the viewers to note is that 6 Torment, even when I'm haste stacked, is right at the tail end of my pet window. Pay attention to the Torment counter I have right above the totem. But also, if you're really trying to min-max the spec, we have all these different mini games we need to think about. And these are things I can't necessarily call out every time they happen because they're too quick. But if you're really trying to advance your practice as a Disc Priest and get more out of the spec, and really like, like harness all the fun that this spec does have to offer, there are like 4 mini games I'm constantly thinking about, and as the viewer kind of pay attention to these. But I have them on paper here. The Mindbender and their Torments, that's a huge minigame. Please revisit my last video on the rotation. It's a huge minigame for us. It's a whole subject on its own, but we're aiming for 6 Torments as a base. 7 is pretty common, and 8 is possible in the right conditions. But then we're also, the next minigame is managing our dot uptime and executes. This is the minigame of switching targets. So we always want to switch targets to find executes. That's for our Torments. We always want to switch targets to make sure we're penancing a dot. And then we also need to switch targets to fall back to our Schism. So it's all about targeting here. It's quite hard to do. I use focus targeting with my Schism to help kind of follow my Schism. And then defensives. That's something I can't always call, but it's Desperate Prayer. That's our shield wall, and Fade. So we kind of want to cycle back and forth between those. Fade is a pretty free defensive. I use them both on one button as a macro for both. So you can press the button, either they'll both trigger, but then their cooldowns are so different, it makes it pretty easy to kind of bounce back and forth between the two with just one button. So food for thought, watch all of that as I'm playing. That is really the best way to advance your practice, is through good targeting skills. So making sure we're catching executes, switching targets to preserve our dots, and then using focus targeting to follow our Schism. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and clip over to the keep. All right, here we go. Things to remember: cast a Radiance after your Rift. That's really all you need for coverage. One thing to think about with min-maxing Radiance is making sure you cast it on the ally most central in your cluster. You really want to hit all 5 of 5, and we'll see some examples in here where it misses. But here in the front, you really just want to speed over. We can't mount. We want to find the darkest red mob for our focus target, and we want to get all dots out but 2 and get into our pet window ASAP. So let's see how I ramp here. Some flash shields, PI's out. Last spell is a shield, and here goes the pet window. Working a Divine Star after my Torments. Working a Radiance after my Rift. Couple extra executes there. I was really going for that 7th Torment, got a little bit greedy, got a little bit low, missed the Torment, but oh well. This pole does have dispels also. It is not super critical. It's not a very, it's a very comfortable timer on it. Small damage, but you do want to get dispels out there. Okay, here on open, we did not use cooldowns intentionally on pole 1. We really want to dump kind of everything we have here. Opening with a barrier, found my darkest red nameplate, Atonement ramp, Rhapsody's out. Here goes the pet. Worked in a Radiance. And on hindsight, it does not look like Star works on the ships, so potentially don't cast Star. There was 6 Torments, And now we're going for a half window, I would call it. So we do not have a pet. We really want to let it reset, but we can go for a Mind Blast Rift. So this dungeon has a lot of 2-target cleave. It's really UI dependent here to see those things. A lot of these mechanics we can also predict that they're about to happen with my targeted cast weak aura. So yeah, we're just fapping a little bit before boss. I always like casting a Radiance before I fly around to go ahead and just bank a proc. Going for the Darkest Red mob, and here's a targeted cast on the Evoker, giving him a shield ahead of time. And then I had to give him a little bit more love there before my pet window, all a part of our ramp. So we're only going to get one pet anyway. It's worth your while to do a proper atonement and dot ramp. There was 7 torments, Radiance before the fly, just banking that proc. And we have one more of those. So we're watching for the targeted cast weak aura. We want to give that person a little bit of love for the bomb. And we really want to get at least 6 torments here. 6 torments and 1 rift. And that was a little bit cringe if you noticed. I only had 3 people atoned, and the Evoker was targeted again, and he did not have an atonement. So I had to break from damaging for spot healing. Still got 6 torments, it looks like, though. But I think here we also can go for a half rotation, just a rift. We don't want to cast 2 Mindbenders generally, but we can easily cast 2 rifts. Working a Radiance before the collapse. Everyone is covered. So on next boss, there's 2 things we're thinking about. On her nameplate, I'm tracking the timer for when we have to bait. So we don't want to bait those big black circles in the middle. We kind of want to bait them away. So watching the nameplate for the bait mechanic, and then I'm using Bigwig's bar timers for the heal absorb mechanic. The burning shadows. And pretty much all we want to do is play a rift, every single burning shadow, Mindbender if we have it. And here on open, we do not have enough time for a Mindbender, but we do have enough time for a rift. So I played a rift early, and here we're setting up for the first burning shadows. Atonements in party. We have a dispel. And that bait could have been a little bit better, but it's not too bad. And approaching this burning shadows, my heals are out already. And that was not the best Radiance. I should have cast Radiance on the Evoker. Replay it if you would like. My atonement missed me, and that's where the mechanic landed, of course. But noticing the timer on the nameplate, it is expiring. That is for the bait, and the burning shadows is happening as well. So we have a double mechanic here. We really want to try and leave room available. But I have my spells rolling for this absorb. And also notice on the boss's nameplate, we're approaching that tick mark at 50%. We have a mechanic. We have quite a few mechanics this season that operate on health thresholds. And I am very thankful to have had a friend help make this weak aura I met through Wago. But that is one of the few spots we can use aerial halt. I think that's exactly what it's meant for. And then zoom in. And then immediately on land, I'm getting my pet and rift out, because we really want the pet rolling before the absorb, which is right here. Dispel, and the rift fully manages that attack. So we're approaching a bait mechanic, and we're also approaching another burning shadows. Baiting back, rift is out preemptively. Dispel, followed by Radiance. And now we're all going to be covered through the collapse. And the rift on its own did all we need. So now we have a full window, a pet plus rift. And I think I get a little greedy, so let's see how it goes here. Karma does bite me in the butt. So a dispel goes out. And I try and just go for a damage grab here, going for an 8 torment window. by not dispelling. I think I only get 7 torments, so super cringe. But what happens is I dispel here right before everyone flies away. And we have a death from the Evoker because he's rotting. But food for thought is if you ever have to fly away like at the 50% mark or the end, give your healer a couple of seconds to heal you before just flying away with a rot damage dot. But I do die here. I would say it's no fault of my own. The telegraph of the spell messed up. But one thing to note, I have one timer on nameplates here. It's quite a long timer, which is weird, but it's group-wide damage. We need to see when this attack is going to happen to time our heals. And boom. So I don't want to take fault there. It took watching this back to see what happened, but the telegraph for the frontal was pointed upwards, and I could not see it. And I stepped right into it. So rip Blizzard. But on land, quick pain sup for a recovery. Radiance into Rapture is always a really nice combo. Buying a proc, getting Mastery for our Rapture shields. And here's the group-wide attack I was telling you about. I already had my Rift out anticipating that attack, and that's really all we need to cover it. And that entire pull was really botched. I lost a lot of damage there. But it was not a wipe, which is really all that matters. Oh wow, I went for a pet here at the end. So let's see how many torments I get. So even though it was a bad pull... yeah, that was an 8 torment window for the win. So I think that's my only 8 in here. And on start of this pull, I'm thinking my pet is 10 seconds away. I need to get dots out. I need to target a dark red mob. And we have 2 target cleave here. So I'm selected. I go ahead and drop my shield wall and a barrier just to help ease the transition. And I'm considering this my ramp phase. So I'm getting dots out, atonements out. I want to drop my Rhapsody. And here goes my pet window. And already right now, my target's dot fell off, so I'm going to switch targets to preserve dots. Then I fall back to my schism with focus targeting. And that was, I think, sadly only a 5 torment window. So a little bit of loss there. But here goes the group wide on the long timer. I had my Rift out preemptively. Snag a couple of executes there is a really good way to restore health and party. And always glancing at spells in between combat is a good idea. I don't have Barrier. I'm about to have 1 pain sup. I have Rapture to use and Vampiric Embrace. Typically... oh wow, I went for a meld drink there. It did not work. And I think I'm about to have Karma bite me in the butt here again too. Yep, okay. So glancing at spells in between combat is always a really good practice. Also, quick battle reses is a good practice. No one should have gave me a ping button. But so in a party of 4, you want to dot 2. I just dot 1. So let's see if I can pick up the recovery here after a death. An early Radiance after my Rift is all we need for some good coverage. Here come execute ranges. 5, 6, and 7 torments. So pretty good to come back from a death and still get 7 torments. In between combat now, I'm always kind of looking at what my Mindbender's doing. He's 10 seconds away. So first order of business here, along with our opener, is just get him back with a couple of smites. And I was selected first here, which is not the best. So Fade and a personal pain sup just to kind of help me get my pet out. All of us are atoned. A shield is last. Here goes our window. Pet Death, Rift, Penance. Spam those blasts. Second Penance. And even though Death is ready, I keep spamming Death and Penance at the tail end for 5 and 6. So I think here all we get is a half window. So just the Rift, letting our pet reset. Darken Radiance for the proc and the coverage. Executes for the win. Wheel and Woe for the win. Fade as well for the win. And to talk a little bit about the mini game of defensives, you really want to play them if you're ever given a single target attack, or if there's group-wide damage on a boss. Really good time to know when to use them. So going into this next pull is really thick. We have single target attacks we're going to track with the targeted cast weak aura, and we have a group-wide attack that we track the timer of on the nameplate. And on land, we have a lot of damage and a death. Not good. So defensives, just to kind of help ease the transition. All I had was barrier, so I led with that, getting my dots out. And here we have Rapture coming in for a fat save, weaving it in between flash heals. And here comes the second group-wide attack. Rapture does a little bit to help soften the blow. And this is a full window, Pet and Rift, plus Vampiric Embrace just to coat the group in heals. And I think I get 7 torments on this one. So the targeted cast weak aura is really important to help kind of see where that damage is going to go. Using a shield on someone preemptively is the best way to do it. And that was 7 torments for the win. And this one I was selected. I gave myself a preemptive shield, but this mechanic is overlapping with the group wide. So a defensive penance into myself and a paints up for the win. I would be curious to play that back and see how long I was sitting on Rift there. So a lot of pulls, especially one like this, you're only going to get 1 pet, but you can and need 2 rifts. And I think 2 rifts there would have really helped. But getting targeted was no fun. But with all of these pulls, UI is really going to assist you. There's a lot of targeted attacks. So my targeted cast weak aura is really going to help see where damage is about to hit. And it's a great opportunity to shield, a great opportunity to give a paints up. A lot of these targeted attacks, they have pretty substantial upfront damage followed by a bleed. So yeah, if you can prevent that upfront damage, it does quite a bit to help prevent anyone from dipping low. You never really want that. Okay, let's see how many torments I get here. This is a full window, Pet and Rift. So I think I get 6 torments here, but leading into this next pull, it's really easy to underestimate it, and defensive penance are your friend. I think I get a couple of those here, but it's going to be our biggest single target heal, especially if you use a defensive penance followed by a shield. They get the proc from the Wheel and Woe too. And this pull is no joke. These mini bosses, I think, are the hardest part. You really have to be on top of your heals here. So we have single target bleeds. We have AoE damage from the ball. I can track both of these cooldown timers on the nameplate. And since I have a double mechanic here, I went for a full out on defense. Shield wall, fade, and a paints up on myself. And I believe I did all of that before the damage landed because I'm tracking it with the targeted cast. And here is a Rapture round. And that was a potion. I absolutely needed that for survival. And the DK there, I wasted a couple globals on him when I shouldn't have. Got hit by the ball and had a 2-stack. There was no saving him at that point. But I think he took a Rapture. And barrier here, sometimes you have to play it for single target defense. And the Evoker really needed that, because if you look at my externals available, I had nothing. So using life was really nice. I think I gave him a direct defensive penance, very necessary at times. And I really just need to spend a moment here regenning. And on this boss, there's really not too much to it. I'm only relying on full rotation windows, so Mindbender and Rift. I'm not sending half rotations. And you want to send your full rotation right after the ball explodes. So if you delay it, it will recover the health from the ball explosion and then fully cover through this attack as well. 6 torments for the win, AMZ for the win. And on that pulsing damage, that is a great place for Fade, which was my defensive I chose there. So in this interim, before the ball explodes, I'm just prioritizing getting my full rotation back. The Mindbender is ready, and there he goes. Mindbender Death, Rift Penance. All you need to do at this point is work in a Radiance, Zephyr for the win, and Fiending for my Torments. 6 Torment, everyone's fully covered. Noticing the targeted cast Weaker is showing who is selected. And we do have a nasty overlap in this fight. You kind of got to watch out for it. But when these ads spawn, I like to cast a Star and drop my Rhapsody for the damage grab. And here comes the shadowy decay. So I have my Pet and Rift out in advance. Recovers from the ball exploding. And I run full defensives on this last one because of the overlap. Fade and Desperate Prayer just to get through it. And I think here I go for a half rotation just to polish them off. Let's see. Pad. Looks like I sent a full rotation. Let's see how it goes. Seven Torments. And if you replay that last little section, I had my death available, but I was expecting the ball to explode. So I kind of held my death and used it more strategically and waited for the explosion to get my double death for my 6th and 7th Torment. So on this guy, damage goes out pretty quickly. So it's 2 target cleave here. I want my pet out, honestly, ASAP. And I didn't have any personal defensives. I take that back. It looks like I had Fade, but I went into Rapture. I did not have my pet out in time. If I tried to rely on the pet there, it would have been too late. And that's kind of what happened there too. I didn't have my pet out in time, so I had to pain sump the Paladin just to kind of get through it. If my Rift and pet were out before those bleeds, before those dots, everything would be fine. Gosh, it really about fucked us up. Thankfully it died, but that was a shield wall just to kind of get through it. It is quite a spiky pull, and I think something that could have helped me there is if maybe I did an atonement ramp with a Radiance. Just get into my pet window a little bit quicker and then figure out the rest as it comes. But we had a little bit of a delay. So noticing on his nameplate, these are our 2 health thresholds. We're really just trying to get to that first one right now. That's when he flies away. And let's see how I play my spell. So we're only tracking 1 attack. And this is where we need to place. It's weird that it hit all of us. We need to place our heals on the spray. So let's go for a full rotation. I also play my Fade for the damage reduction. Work in a Radiance for the coverage. And with that wave attack, those are called private auras. It's not something you can track on your bars, but party nameplates does help you see them. I like to make sure they're at least atoned, give them a shield if possible. And for this spray attack, we only have a half rotation with the Rift. And I have a small mistake here. I should have immediately gone into a Rapture there, and I probably could have saved a life. But oh well, we have reses. And here comes the next spray. We want our pet out ahead of time. So we have a dot out, we have atonements in party, pet death, Rift penance. Let's work in a Radiance. And for that one, I sacrificed a Torment by weaving in a life. It's a really great spell to use when people are dipping low. You can kind of plan to use it. So I really needed to hit my group-wide heals there, but working in a life saved a life. And for this area, I kind of like turning off my UI just for the mood. But I only get a couple of balls and then I zip on over. I think that's totally fine. And then on land, I believe the first thing I do is cast a Radiance just to go ahead and bank a proc. Yep. And with this, we have two attacks. We have the web attack and we have the spray again. It's really just a full send. If we have a full rotation, we use both. If we only have the rift, we use the rift. And then weave in Rapture as necessary. If you fall off cycle, which I think is what happens here, you can weave in a barrier as kind of a way to get back on sync. So let's see how it goes. So we don't have any damage for about 10 seconds. I'm not going to send anything. I'm just going to kind of buy time with some smiting. Shielded the Death Knight who had the spray. And after the spray, we have the first round of webs. So for this, it looks like I'm going for a half rotation first. Starting with a half, then to a full. So here comes the spray. So this is a full rotation. Atonements are in party. And I go for full defensives. Desperate Prayer and Fade. Work in a Radiance. And that full rotation covers all of us. So here comes the next spray attack. I should go for a half rotation, a Rift. And I do. So here's where I think you kind of fall behind. So here comes the next spray, and I don't have heals out already. So I barrier. Barrier, a couple of flash heals, a life. And I get my pet out delayed, but we need it to recover the health. And now it's going to somewhat overlap with this. Flaps really helped us there. And I don't know what's going on with that attack. I think it's bugging. But here comes the spray, and all we have is a half rotation. I lead in with a Rapture, it looks like. And boom. I thought we had more, but I guess that was it. So, yeah, really that boss, you're only tracking 2 spells. I like dividing my timers, putting one of the attacks on a nameplate, and then one with bigwigs. So I don't have to discern if I have 2 bars stacked on top of one another. I just don't want to think about it, so I separate them. One on the nameplate, one through bigwigs. And a little bit of a rip. We did not have percent, but that happens. It is not too big of a deal. But Dog Monster, our tank. And 6-7 torments to polish it off. So I think one of my favorite dungeons, I did run this about 3 or 4 times in a row to try and get a good recording. And it's something I really recommend to any healer, is not run dungeons just in a random order. Sometimes running them back to back can really help you learn mechanics and like hone in on your rotation and kind of overcome obstacles. Like if you make a mistake on one dungeon, just try and not make that mistake on the next one. It's a really good way to practice dungeons. So always remember, all you need to do is cast a Radiance after your Rift. You do need to practice casting it on the best person. And then if you're looking for additional ways to advance your practice and get more out of the spec, it is through these individual mini games with targeting for our dot spread, executes, and following our schism. Then we also have the mini game of our torments, aiming for 6, 7, or 8 when possible. And then the very important mini game of defensives, using Desperate Prayer and Fade in a cycle, going back and forth, is really going to advance your gameplay and take you to the next level. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're interested in private lessons, check out my Medify, or if you're interested in any of my UI elements, consider joining the channel. I would really appreciate it. So again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, Disc out.